People talk about knowing who your customer is. Start with who you are, who your agency is, why it exists. What is that personality of your agency? It may feel like a marketingy, fluffy, useless, waste of time thing to do. So not. If you just stop and say, if my agency was a person, what's his personality? What does he look like? Where's he been? What's going on in his life? Why is he around here? What does he feel? You will suddenly start to get this amazing clarity as to why, who clients are that need to work with you, and why they're going to be attracted to work with you.
Today we have a very special guest. I guess I say that about every single person that comes on this show, Tim. I'm like, oh, our specialist guest ever.
If we weren't excited about it, we should have him on.
That's very true. So I am excited about our guest. We go way back. The joke is that we grew up together. We did not. He is from the great state of England. Yeah, I called it a state.
I heard you. I wasn't going to jump on
What you didn't hear was all the laughing from our listeners, but they were. Okay. I'll say this. We bring on great agency owners and they all kind of do it a little bit differently. And in England, it is different. I mean, having a European agency focused on Europe, focused on England, focused on the UK, it is fascinating to listen to. So today we have Bryan Plumb, my good friend. They call him Bryan Plumb, but this guy's a peach. All right. You know what I'm saying? He is
horrible.
It's so bad. Agency Talk listeners, please enjoy this great conversation with our good friend, Bryan Plumb. Tim, I'm very excited to welcome our good friend from across the pond where I live, Bryan Plumb, to the show. And Bryan, by the way, we go super far back. Bryan and I basically grew up together, which is pretty nice, right? In this digital marketing game.
Yeah.
And Tim, I know you're going to love Bryan because he's an incredibly patient person, really humble. Really successful agency over here, and really close personal friends of the royal family. So we're just thrilled to have you.
That is the trifecta right there. Bryan, welcome. We're so glad to be able to talk with you today.
I'm really, really glad to be on there. I must say, I think there's probably one thing Marcus said that might be a lie there about me being humble. Everything else totally true. So yeah, no, honestly, it's an absolute pleasure to speak with you guys and to sort of share one of our stories with your listeners. I'm really excited to talk about it, really.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, just to take it back for the listeners here, Bryan and I have known each other for a long time. We didn't grow up together. I'm not English, but I did have a front row seat to watching you build your agency, reinventing yourself, speaking on stages, becoming a top partner at different events. I mean, I've been there to watch this scale, but I've also watched you guys pivot and reinvent yourself. And that's probably just as exciting. And I know some of the story that you're going to talk to us about today, which I know a lot of our listeners are probably going to be excited about, is when it wasn't great. And I think what's really crazy is Tim and I love this because we have a lot of really incredible people on the show, but rarely do we ever talk about the slog of it all. The dig of getting there has not really been. It's like most people just go, oh, Bryan's just successful. Be Digital is just doing it, right? Conduit's they're incredible. Look how big their office is. You know, those guys clearly are amazing, but nobody ever sees kind of the hard work, the trench work. So we're happy that you did that and super excited that you would be willing enough to share those times too.
Thank you. No, I'm really looking forward to it, actually. And I think it's interesting because as agency owners, we're all used to that sort of peaks and troughs and peaks and troughs. And I do want to talk about that because that's really where this whole thing came from. But lots of agencies have the story of, oh, there was tough times and we couldn't pay the bills and the like, and they've all got the story. What I want to talk about, though, today is what happened this year. So our agency's been around for like 14 years, I think it is now. Like you say, we've pivoted, we've adapted, we've adjusted, but we've been around for 14 years as an agency. We are super niche. So anyone who doesn't know what we do, my agency is Be Digital, and we help companies who are in the education sector to get their products and services into the hands of teachers to help improve the lives of children and teachers. So it's super, super niche. We mostly work in the UK, but we do have some international clients. And we've had challenges and we've, struggled to pay the bills. We've not known how to scale. But let me tell you, let me bring you to February, March time this year. So we're literally a few months ago. Almost overnight, we lost like 40% of our clients. We're just done. Putting that into perspective, we're not a massive agency, but for us, that was just over $500,000 a year that just vanished out of the bank account. And I'm talking like almost overnight. It literally got to the point where I didn't want to answer the phone. Like the phone would ring, and I'm thinking, I can't. I even said to our account director, I was like, I can't answer the calls anymore because it feels like I'm answering calls to someone who's got another problem, something else. And just to put this into perspective, by the way, like this wasn't like, well, we were doing stupid stuff and we kind of deserved it. This was like knock-on impact of COVID, really. This was like, we had a bunch of clients where totally unrelated within a week. I think it was 3 different clients where their owners had just basically got bored and said, I'm out, I'm done, close the thing down. Wow. We had 3 of those within the space of a week. We had 2 companies where they'd sold themselves, like they'd sold, so that was great news for them. But literally these things were coming one after another, after another, after another. You lose 40% of your clients, you lose $500,000 overnight, you've got a dozen staff to pay for, you've got software licenses, you've got your insurance, you've got pensions, you've got all these ad costs, you've got these things you can't just stop the machine, and you've got to sort of pump more money into it. Mm-hmm. We also found out, by the way, during that period that we also had like a workout to be about $110,000 bill that also needed to be paid. Like, this is just wonderful timing. This is just a few months ago, right? Now, thankfully, we'd built systems and processes over the last sort of 18 months prior to this, which was to help us scale. And the theory was, and it was theory, if these processes and the systems worked how we thought they would, they should help us to scale, but they should also help us to almost immediately plug the gap that we just lost of the $500,000 and some. That was the real test for us this year. And that's really what I want to sort of talk to you guys about and with your audience, to say there are systems and strategies and structures that you can put in place that we spent a long time figuring out, but you can just clone these, put them into your business, and this will actually help you to scale. But it means that if the shit hits the fan, you're fine. Like, you're okay. You're okay.
First of all, I feel like most people don't plan for that, Tim. Am I right? Because like I'm sitting here watching Tim's face the whole time. He's shaking his head yes, and like, oh man, and I could tell. It's like, Tim, you've been in the business for so long. What's your gut when you hear Bryan say that?
We've had something similar happen years ago where a client who was an enormous part of our business decided to take things in-house. And boy, oh boy, I mean, that's a wake-up call. But the EDU from that is amazing. And that just builds such a better agency DNA to work through things like that. I can't wait to hear about this.
We were in a place where many agencies will recognize where we basically just stagnated. We'd been around for 10, 12 years, whatever it would be. And we were fine. We were okay. But it sort of, everything had sort of just peaked and sort of hit this sort of flat line, to be honest. I'm like, it's okay. It's good. We're having fun. But how can we now grow bigger? Also, it's incredibly dangerous. You're at that point where you're doing okay, but if you lose a couple of clients, you're in trouble and you can't really be there. The problem, though, is you say, well, we can't gain more clients because I've not got enough staff because of the processes that we have. So do we need to hire more staff? But if we hire more staff, we can take more clients, but we still don't really get any more profit. And actually, the risk is now bigger. So that's really where we were at. So it's worth noting, by the way, that prior to setting up the agency, I had no marketing experience. I've never worked as a marketer. I've never worked in an agency and no business experience. So I kind of like that because it means I've made a lot of mistakes, and we've done things at the agency that aren't typical because we don't know what typical means, which is kind of cool, but it also means you make stupid mistakes. But I did recognize, though, that the only way to get around this was to get help. Like, I need help. I need someone who can look at this from an outside perspective and say, like, what's going on with the business? Because clearly there are serious bottlenecks in this agency that's preventing you from growing anymore. So the first thing that we did, there's really 3 main things that we did, by the way, to sort of solve this agency problem and sort of tackle how we could scale and set ourselves up, I suppose, if anything went wrong. And the first thing was putting together a real leadership team. It sounds obvious, but so many agencies, ourselves included, it was pretty flat. Like, we had some account managers, we had some content people, and I technically own the company and run it and so on, but there was no real structures in place, even though we're small. And I think because we were small, a dozen or so staff, it felt to me like it's kind of pointless. Why would you have all of this sort of hierarchy? You guys must know Traction. Is it Gene
Yeah.
Wickman? Yeah.
You're
So
talking. You're
one
first
of
of
the
all,
things-
Tim's like that's like, hey, EOS, like traction. Come on now, that's like
Exactly.
a big deal. And you guys, so early on though, when you were doing the leadership, did you read Traction, and then that came to be about wanting to have a leadership team and be less flat?
Yeah, that's what I say. So going through Traction, Traction's one of those books that I'd read before, but I'm guilty of, you read the book and you say, oh, cool, I've read the book. And then you read the next book. And then you go, wait a minute, I'm sure I've got a book about something to do with agency growth. I should probably read one of them and actually do the stuff that's inside. These aren't storybooks, these are action books.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I'd read it before, and on second or third reading thought, hey, some good shit in here, should probably do this. So we thought we should put things in play. I am the annoyingly stereotypical visionary, I think they'd call it, inside Traction, of, the typical entrepreneur of 100 ideas, mind runs at 1,000,000 miles an hour, ADHD, can't focus on anything, absolute nightmare. And we had a person in the company and actually an ex-client that I wanted to bring in as well, that were amazing integrators that would basically rein me in and say, oh, well and good, but how are we technically going to deliver this, and does it actually make any logistical sense to do that kind of stuff? And that combo is amazing. Funny story, we've got a new starter that joined us just this week, and I was speaking to her yesterday. She's literally been here 2 days, and she said to me, oh, I love Chris and Victoria. They're in our leadership team. They're the integrators. But love Chris and Victoria. They're like the mum and dad of the business. They just know everything. They're supportive. And they know what to do. You're just kind of like the fun uncle. And I was like, yes, that's absolutely right. I'm great fun in small doses, but an utter nightmare.
Yeah.
So and I thought
Uncle Bryan gave me a beer.
Funko.
This is it. This is exactly it. It's like, yeah, she's been here 2 days. It's like, you know us very well now. So, but putting those two things together is amazing, because what it allowed us to do was, I asked Chris, who was brand new to us at this point, to analyze, I suppose, like a process and perception analysis of the business. So analyze internally, what are we doing as an agency? How are we delivering work? How are we managing work? Like, what are our internal processes? Because I know what we do, but we've been around for 10, 12 years and we just do that because we've always done it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it makes any logical sense. So you'd analyze all those processes that we were doing so that we could, create better processes. And that's what I'm going to talk about in a second. But then also analyze our perception in the industry. Now, we're quite lucky. We've been around for, a decade or so when Chris had joined us. So, and it's a really small niche industry, so it was easy to do this. But I actually think any agency with even a year or so experience can do this by having someone reach out to clients, past and present, and, bad clients, good clients, ex-clients and the like, and say, what do you think of Be Digital? Why did you join us? And I'm not that necessarily interested in where their problems were and why they structurally joined us. They needed leads, blah, blah, blah. But why us? Like, what did you like about us? What do you think about us? What does our brand make you think of? And that understanding as to what people actually perceive you as, for me, was really breakthrough. It was really fascinating because the angle we'd been going down for many years around, we've got all this experience in the education sector and we know what we're doing, and, we're smart, professional, all the like, was great, but that was not why people joined us in the slightest. They actually joined us because we were very different to every other agency that was out there, because we're in this tight sector that's run by, 50, 60 odd year old white men. And we're kind of young and we're fun and we swear and we do things very differently. And that's actually why they join us, because they see us as kind of fun and kind of exciting and something that they want to be a part of, to stand out from the crowd. And actually, just something that I think I've mentioned this to you guys before, that is like a mini take home, I think, from any listener when I've worked with a bunch of agencies, as you know, Mark, because we're trying to help them to say where are their problems and how can they sort of adapt and scale and the like, and sort of move forward. And one of the really basic questions I ask these guys is, if your agency wasn't a business but it was a person, how would you describe it?
Yeah.
Like, if you want to stand out, if you want to just not be another one of the gazillion agencies on the planet, if your agency was a person, how do you describe him, her? And so many agencies can't answer that, and they struggle, and yet they wonder why their close rate is dreadful. They wonder why they can't get leads. They wonder why they can't retain. They wonder why they're just seen as another agency. They wonder why they have to convince people to sign for 6 to 12 months. By the way, our model, by the way, guys, we don't, our contracts are 30-day rolling for every single client. That's how they've always been. That's how they'll always be. Our clients stay with us for 3-4 years on average before they sell, they move on, they bring people in-house, and we have 30-day rolling because we don't need to tie people down.
You know, the first thing I wanted to say was first, I hope everybody heard that. Tim and I, the first time we ever heard Bryan say, can you describe, like if somebody had to describe as a person, I mean, that's mind-blowing for me. And Tim, I know that was profound for you too. And not only the way you thought about it, but the rest of the team too, right?
Well, I think a number of things. I mean, Bryan, just to go back for a second, what was it about Gino Wickman's book that, you know, so many people out there, and I'm not diminishing or, you know, depreciating this, but so many people are what I would call book of the month club managers, right? Oh, I just read this, I'm going to do that. And the consistency isn't developed. What is it about EOS that resonated with you that said was an aha moment?
The main thing about it is if my t-shirt, I'm neurodivergent. My brain works in frustrating ways for many, many people. And there's genius behind that because it's constant creative, constant thinking, and constantly running in a million directions. But it's a nightmare to work with. The beauty behind that book and that model is everything is a process, and everything is step 1, get your team. Step 2, understand your vision. Step 3, it's do this, do this, do that. And you can put your creativity into each one of those buckets. And that's where the genius lies to me, because it's a very straightforward method to work through. And if someone with my brain can work through that method with help of an actual integrator, then like anyone can do this. But yeah, it all makes perfectly logical sense. And there is some groundwork to do behind it, but it's very clearly laid out.
It is fascinating. It really is. That book gives a pragmatism to people like you and like me that are everything's possible, right? Everything's possible all the time. And that becomes frustrating. And you said creative genius. My team calls it PETA. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, I
do. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but ultimately, if everything's possible, then nothing gets done. And I love the pragmatism of that book. And when I read it, and this is not to, I'm never the smartest guy in the room, any room. But I read that and I thought, oh my God, this articulated what's been in my head, because innately and inherently, I just knew there had to be a process that would allow you to take that vertically. And that book just resonated so much with me, and I'm so glad it did with you as well.
The genius behind the book is that actually it's not that revolutionary ideas. The ideas are very logical. They're just put down in a very clear, defined way to say, if you fill in the blanks, all of this stuff is logical anyway, but you've probably never done it. And just having someone write that down in a logical sense means it makes the world so much more straightforward. But yeah, getting those two people in play to begin with is the yin to the yang is really important, because otherwise you run the agency that many of us have, and many I'm sure continue to do, where you're just chasing your tail. You're always you're getting the sale in, and then great, and you move on to try and get another sale, and you try and move another sale, but these ones have just lost the client, so it's okay. And that's why you get the peaks and troughs. And the reason I brought Chris in, I said originally, we've got to stop the peaks and the troughs. We've got to just try and increase on some sort of steady basis. It doesn't need to be crazy growth, but we just need to be able to have predictable growth. And that's why we brought him in, and having someone integrator in place and these sort of models absolutely make total sense. And with that understanding of our sort of internal process, and I won't go into like what we were doing wrong and what we were doing right, because the reality is every agency runs slightly differently anyway, and there's a million things that we do terribly that I would never advise, but there are several things we do quite well. But that internal process and that perception analysis, when you understand those bottlenecks, and it's easy for someone else to do it, and when you understand how the world perceives you, when you can answer that question of, if my agency was a person, Like, what's his personality?
Mm-hmm.
You're into something. I truly think you're into something magical at that moment, because you can start to put really basic strategies in play. And I'll tell you, like, three of the things that we did that are really, really basic, but have absolutely blown the business apart and just gone crazy busy for us. And this is what people can do. But I do think you need to do that background work first, which is why I wanted to talk about the integrators, the visionary, and its analysis.
How does your team embrace that part of it too? So, like, I know you could probably articulate who you are as a person or how people perceive you, because you did all that work, which, by the way, is such a smart, small little thing to be able to go out and poll your current, past customers to figure out how they perceive you. I wonder what they would say as well about that person question, to be honest, Bryan. I think that's really cool. But how did your team, real quick, before you go into those two amazing points that you want to do, how did your team perceive that as well? Like, how did they deal with that exercise?
They found it fascinating. One of the things that we do as an agency, though, is we have a client health check. So they're used to us speaking to clients and them speaking to clients for honest feedback. So every month, our clients have to, as part of our requirements, they have to fill in a health check form where they're literally just rating the output, the expectations, the communication, and their overall gut feel on, like, I think it's a score of, now it's sort of a 1 to 5, where 1 is there's a problem, 5 is everything's gravy. And every month, clients have to do that across the board. And they're just saying, communication's been great, output's not what we'd expect, expectations that, because if we have that feedback from them on a regular basis, it's very easy for our account managers to identify that there may be a problem in the future. Or if they suddenly disappear, we can say, I don't get it because everything was green. So when we're speaking to our account manager saying, we're going to reach out to your current clients and we're going to reach out to your past clients and we're going to get their expectations of you, because our staff, I believe our staff, they do an amazing job of fully understanding who we are as an agency and what we stand for and what we believe in.
Yep.
And for them, this was a real good exercise to see if that came true. So when we took all that information around the process of the perception and so on, we're like, what do we do with this? And this is the bit that's agencies, if like, I don't care about his background and what's going on and they lost it, just give me the money shot. This here, listen, copy, repeat, plug in. It's like it's 1995. We launched a newsletter. Everybody's about to turn off. And I'm aware of that, and that's fine, their loss. We launched a newsletter. Now, Chris came to me with this idea. Chris is on big bucks, big salary guy and all the rest. And he says, we should do a newsletter. I'm like, we should do a newsletter. This is what we're paying you for. This is what your insight is after all this. We should do a newsletter. And he's like, yeah. But we should do a newsletter, but it's a sideways look at marketing. There's enough stuff out there that says how to run a Facebook ad. There's enough stuff out there that says, how to convert more customers and what a landing page should look like. So I don't care about that. We should take it as a sideways look at marketing, where the purpose of the newsletter is just to push that perception that people have of us, that we know our stuff, that we understand the world of education, that we understand the world of marketing, that, I mentioned earlier, how would you describe yourself as if you're an agency? And for us, we see that our agency, it used to be the naughty kid that sits at the back of the bus. Basically, they'd be at the back of the bus, they'd be smoking cigarettes behind the bike sheds and all the rest of it. They'd be a little bit naughty, a little bit cheeky, but they got the grades. Now they've grown up. And now they've finished college, they've gone through uni, and they've started a career. And at this point, they're like, do you know what? I am sure of myself. I've still got a little bit of the bad boy attitude behind me, but I know that I'm always learning and I know I can be wrong. But I'm confident enough to stick my opinions forward and say, this is what I want to do because I believe this is going to get the results. And that's who my agency is and what we stand for. And this newsletter is not how to do X, how to do Y, how to do Z. No, it's pushing the idea that is who we are as an agency and that some people won't like that. And that's absolutely fine. Others will absolutely fall in love with that person and we want them as customers. So this newsletter, we actually took probably several months in the planning. We've just sent out we do it every 2 weeks. And we just sent out our 24th one. So we're 48 weeks in. So it's nearly been a year that this newsletter's been going out for.
Is it a physical newsletter?
It's an email newsletter that goes out to our lead list of people who've either subscribed to the newsletter or subscribed to lead magnets, whatever else it may be that historically we have done. And that just goes out to them. But this newsletter is story oriented, right? So the structure of it It's a long newsletter, by the way. It's every 2 weeks. This is a long newsletter. And the beginning of it is always story oriented. It's always written by me. It's something that's just happened that week. So the last one that went out was, it's been hot here, as you can tell by my glow. The last one was around having family over and me taking some of them out paddleboarding and the mistakes this guy was making in paddleboarding, and then relating that to the business world, the marketing world. So we have this. It's always quite comical, I suppose, but it's personality driven story that's always at the very beginning. We go into a few marketing wins. There's, if you've not done this, here's a really cool thing that you could do, and it's based on stuff that we are actually doing right now. A lot of it then is aggregated. So here's some technology that you can use, just some tech to tap, some books to read, that kind of thing, some people to follow in the industry. We then take a thread, like a Twitter thread, where people have talked about stuff, and we just go, here's a really cool thread of stuff. You should go check it out. Is it just aggregated content really that comes across? And then we finish always with something to add. It's just an advert. It's not about the sector. It's, an ad about, I don't know, Lego or something. And we have that at the bottom as well. So but it's a real Samsung, absolutely packed, jam full with personality, with my colloquialisms and all the rest of it. So people get to feel that this is who we are as a brand. Not once in the 48 weeks of running this have we ever tried to sell anything through this newsletter. Not once have we ever diverted people to book a call with us, to book a strategy session, or to buy our services, or even talked about it. It was never, ever the point, which is a slightly different approach to many newsletters that's out there. And I tell you, this has been the biggest, most impactful customer generating tool as a standalone to begin with that we have. So the newsletter has been essential in grabbing lots of people and conversing with them in a real colloquial way. With there's zero, you don't even know how to buy from us. That's not the point. We're just talking to you and we're explaining stuff, and there's personality across there and information. And it's been, our open rates, it's very difficult to measure open rates now, obviously with iOS changes and all the like. But our open rates in this newsletter are consistently 60 to 65%. Our clicks to other ads in the list are consistently around 30, 40% click-throughs.
Wow.
It's just, and that's over a year. It's utterly unheard of because it's, and here's the cool thing. Every time we send a newsletter, we get replies.
This is so good. This is why Agency Talk exists. We get to hear from really incredible agency owners like you who have been there, who have seen it, who are doing something simple, but something completely disruptive, which I like, by the way, because disruption sounds like a newsletter, some personalized videos, and taking some damn time to figure out that you're actually speaking to the right people. Dude, we've taken so much of your time. I'm just thankful, man. I'm thankful that we're friends. I'm thankful that you said yes to being on our show. I'm so thankful that all the listeners get the impact of that. And, but I will say this, there is one quick last thing that we do every single show. And let's say that somebody turns off Spotify right now, slams the laptop. What's a very actionable one? You've given everybody 15 actionable things, but give us one more thing that people can go do right now in their agency.
The most important thing, and again, this isn't going to be the silver bullet for people, the most important thing is it starts with knowing who you are. People talk about knowing who your customer is. Start with who you are, who your agency is, why it exists, what is that personality of your agency. It may feel like a marketing-y, fluffy, useless, waste of time thing to do. So not. If you just stop and say, if my agency was a person, what's his personality? What does he look like? Where's he been? What's going on in his life? Why is he around here? What does he feel? You will suddenly start to get this amazing clarity as to why, who clients are that need to work with you, and why they're going to be attracted to work with you. That is, start there.
Love it. Well, thank you so much. For myself, and also for everybody who's listening, you don't hear the sultry voice of Tim because he had a quick technical difficulty and had to fall off. I personally feel naked, but on behalf of Tim and myself and Agency Talk and all of our listeners, Bryan, thank you so much, brother. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
I can say that interview was fantastic, and I can tell you that my big takeaways were at the very end, but Tim selfishly wasn't there. I just want to say that you probably don't have a big takeaway.
So first of all, I think he's a great guy, not a good guy. He's a great guy, and he's very self-effacing, and he's really done some great things over the last year, which I think those were the takeaways that he brought. And yes, our technology on this end did shit the proverbial bed, and I wasn't here, so I'm sure you closed it very well.
If you want to go back and you want to check out that, we have agency-talk.com where you can listen to this episode, and you can also listen to a bunch of other episodes we've had forever. We continue to have great people on. We have a bunch of incredible people lined up. I mean, I'm telling you, Agency Talk, we're trying to make this the place to be, not because Tim and I are smart, but the people we bring on make us look dumb. Anyway, until next time, we love you guys. Thanks for listening and checking out Agency Talk. Have a great one.